I do have to admit, even though it's so blasted cold here in the winter that I will never understand why people willingly stay here. Having someone to cuddle for warmth with is entirely worth the cold toes. Oh, I'm sure that you could rattle off a list of other things that make the cold worth it, but having someone to cuddle with is absolutely the best reason. Which is why I'm wondering why you're still over there while I'm here alone under the blanket, currently freezing to death. If you hadn't caught my hint already. The cookies will be in the oven for quite some time yet, my dear. You don't need to fret. Besides, there are worse things in the world than burnt cookies. For instance, being alone under a blanket. My powers of persuasion know no bounds. Now, please. I am dramatic, but I am also cold, so I believe it's warranted. There we are. My little personal fireplace. You were always warm to me. Oh, I was so lonely without you, my love. That is certainly a question. How did I deal with being alone for so long? I assume you mean with my self-imposed exile and, well, fugitive status. And knowing that you had forgotten me. To be fair, love, I forgot you as well. There was a sense of longing that I had for you that did not make sense because how could it? I hardly knew you. How could I long for a sense of friendship and love for someone who I clearly didn't know that well? But something kept nagging at me, and that feeling of longing would not go away. In fact, it only grew. After a while, I knew there must have been something more, some history between us. What else could explain the ease with which we existed together? The calm I felt around you. But there were no memories other than the ones that we had created recently, since stumbling upon you while looking for Azra. So how could that possibly be true? I didn't understand until we were in the hangman's realm what the longing I felt for you was. Then everything we had together came back like a whiplash. And finally, everything came into focus for me. I cannot even begin to describe the combination of loss and relief that overtook me when I finally found out who you were. And that you weren't dead. I grieved and rejoiced so quickly, like a flash of lightning. We were given a second chance. They took us away from each other. But I wasn't going to let it happen again. But we were talking about loneliness, of course. I did feel lonely for some time. And while some of it derived from our memories being taken from us, making us strangers to one another, I believe more came from my own self. Portia used to make jokes that I'm always shouldering someone else's burdens while lamenting how heavy the load is. But I didn't understand that until I started letting others in. Not just trying to keep them at arm's length with this persona that I had created. I had a fear that I was going to hurt you if I let you see the real me. But, as I am often finding these days, I was wrong. How does this relate to loneliness? Well, you don't realize how lonely you are when you try to shoulder everything on your own. When you isolate because you don't want to burden others. When you believe that you can handle absolutely everything yourself. That sort of self-imposed isolation is the most chilling of all. Finally learning to accept help. Even your help. Even though I was terrified that it was either going to lead you to being taken away from me again, or lead you to hating me, or some other disastrous fate where you didn't want anything to do with me. Helped me the most with my loneliness, and I didn't even know it. Allowing myself to be vulnerable to the people who mattered most in my life showed me that trying to be the strongest and the most dependable can be incredibly lonely. It took me a long time to stop feeling quite so lonely. And there are times when I still feel it. But I think that is just part of the human experience. Loneliness is an emotion just as happiness and sadness are. If not a little more complicated. Maybe even a little less in some nights. I think we're allowed to be lonely. We're allowed to feel negative emotions just as we feel positive ones. Because that's the depth of being human. It lets us know that there's something that we need. Fulfilling that need, however, can be a more difficult task. Which brings me back to allowing others to help you. Allowing others to see your weakness. Having someone who is outside yourself giving advice or helping is so vague, but the word encompasses so much that could occur, and honestly, it's the best thing I can come up with. Loneliness isn't weakness. Asking for help isn't weakness. It's taken me quite some time to figure that out. I may not have all the answers as to how to help loneliness, just as my friends don't. But I believe that I am less lonely if I ask for help than if I were to suffer in silence, if that makes sense. Human emotions are complicated, and there's no one right way to go about things. And there will probably be mistakes in the interim, trying to help. But that is as much the human condition as having those emotions are. Trying things, making mistakes, learning from those mistakes, growing. It's all part of it. Don't let my dramatics fool you. I am quite smart. At least, sometimes. Did that satisfy your curiosity, love? Thank you. It has been a long time since someone has said that they're proud of me. I'm proud of you too, you know. For everything. Ah, the cookies. Quick, before they burn. Ah, good. They didn't burn. You're right, love. You're right. Everything did work out. In the end.